Next up, Will, have you heard about these Juul vape
Mm-hmm.
things?
Mm-hmm.
They're so popular.
I think Jack uses it.
These are so popular. They came out of nowhere and took over the whole smoking world, vaping world. I don't know. And recently the CEO came out and he said to parents, "I'm sorry." He apologized because he's taking all kinds of heat these days from regulators that are saying, "Hey, we have an epidemic." Apparently, they say they have a teen vaping epidemic where some astronomical percentage of high school students using these things quietly in all circumstances. And the thing is, I mean, I think a lot of people don't know these have a very high nicotine content. So they're super addictive, possibly even more addictive than cigarettes. Is the claim here? And there's a documentary coming out. CNBC is going to investigate the e-cigarette debate in a documentary called Vaporized. And in the meantime, they put out this article here that suggests that Juul is being used by 21% of high school students. Did you hear that
Wow.
number? Did you hear that number?
That's like 1 in 4.
21% of high school students
a lot of kids.
vaped last year, and that's on a federal survey. Think about the number that didn't answer that accurately, right? Not everyone's going to admit to it.
Is it just Juul specific?
No, the question was vape specific,
Oh,
but
okay.
Juul owns 40% of the market, right? Like, so Juul is the market as far as, and they own 40% of the vaping market, the e-cigarette market, but it's likely much higher amongst high school kids because it's the most marketed and the most available, right? They have the biggest distribution chain. You can walk into a gas station and this is the brand that you see. Now, they also took a lot of heat because they had this ad campaign when it first launched, which was the people looked very young in the ad campaign. And they were forced to take the ad off the air. And now they say, hey, we kind of regret that ad as well. It was colorful. They went after social media people, but they actually ran this like an ad on TV with very young, like cool, old school cigarette style advertising, which they were allowed to do because this market isn't really regulated to the same degree that the cigarette market is yet. So they could get around the certain restrictions that existed in advance, or that were put in place to protect, I guess, teens from tobacco marketing. So the tobacco industry, they looked at this and they said, hey, this is a huge play for us. And they went and invested massively in Juul. This company, Altria, which is the top U.S. cigarette company, invested $12.8 billion into Juul for 35% stake in the company. So if you don't think this stuff is addictive, if you don't think this stuff is interesting to the cigarette industry, I got $12.8 billion that beg to differ, because they came in, they saw this trend taking place, and they're like, man, we can jump around the restrictions. We can make these colorful ads. We can put the young people in it. We can put it in the store. The studies aren't out yet. And that's the crazy part. I'm sitting here reading this article, and the CEO of the company is saying, hey, I'm sorry. And also, we don't have the data yet. He admits that like they don't have the studies he would like yet to figure out what this is actually doing to people. And that's part of the reason for the apology. And so it goes on to profile a couple of different situations in which there's a few different teen girls who are addicted here. Juul pods contain 5% nicotine, whereas other pods before Juul's introduction were between 1 and 2.4%. So in some cases, the Juul pod could be 5 times more nicotine than the existing e-cigarettes that they replaced. Now, the company has recently introduced lower dosages with 3% nicotine for some of its flavors. But the other part about the reason that this was attractive to young people is the flavors they put out. They put mango, watermelon, all this stuff, which you can imagine being attractive in a convenience store or gas station to a particular clientele, particularly a minor clientele. So Anyway, it's like a lot of things. It's like a lot of things that are out there. Benefits, drawbacks. Some people say, hey, this has helped me quit smoking. And I'm convinced it's better than smoking. I'm not saying I am. I don't know. But a lot of people seem to be on board with that. And so for those people, it appears to be super helpful. But that little entry point allows the company to go and take that inch and go a mile and say, hey, this is helping people, so we're going to market it like crazy. But if you were trying to get people off of cigarettes, then why does your advertising look like that? That doesn't look like trying to get people off cigarettes. That looks like trying to get people on Juul. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It looks like you're looking for new customers because she hadn't even been on the planet very long, Will. So she didn't have time to get addicted to cigarettes yet, and she's got the Juul, and she's looking cool. She's biting the Juul, you see.
Yeah.
So it's tough, man. It's a tough one to figure out. Humans should be able to do whatever it is they want to do, but we all seem to agree that minors shouldn't, which is the reason you put these restrictions in place. And then you say to yourself, well, hey, they're not allowed to buy it. But then you say, well, then how are 21% of high schoolers saying that they do? And you start to realize you have a problem. And then you start to look at the marketing. Then you start to look at the leadership of the company. And then you start to ask the remaining questions. So I'm actually going to watch this documentary, by the way, because I'm curious about it. These things took off. But it's like everything in life. Well, nothing is free. You understand? If you enjoy doing something, you should examine it because it may have a downside. And that goes for almost everything. I don't care if it's a Juul pod or an ice cream cone. You're going to pay at some point. Whether it's a real mango or a mango pod, 5% nicotine. That's the thing. So just think about it. You make the trade. You decide. But the minors, maybe they're not in the best frame of mind yet without the fully developed brain and whatnot.